right, so here's what I learned today as part of my SQL training. I learned that SQL query language has two branches. The first branch is data definition language, DDL, and the second branch is data manipulation language, DML. So what we're going to focus on today is the data definition language. So these are the functions that I learned so far. So let's start with the use function. So if we're using use, that means we're just making sure that it's hard-coded what database we want to use within a specific query. So this is naturally done through the user interface by clicking on this thing when you are creating a query. But if you had a lot more databases, I imagine that's not very scalable. So you just have to be precise about what you're doing. And in order to make a decision about what you want to do, you can either type it out. So you can say, I want to use H+ active. And this pop-up menu comes up, which is the smart, AI functionality within SQL. Or you can do what I like to do so far, which is just drag H+ active from the view directly into here, so that I don't make any spelling errors or any mistakes that I can avoid easily. So once you've decided you're going to use a specific database, you can decide what you want to do with it. So in my case, I'm going to create a table. And this create function, what I've learned so far is that you can create tables and you can create databases. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just creating the table first, and then I'm going to create a different database. So the table that I'm going to create is called DMATemp. And then in order to create the table, I need to open up a red parentheses and close it out and end it with a semicolon. And then I'm going to add the columns names and then the field type and whatever else I need to precise about that. So in my case, I'm going to create column 1. That's the name of my first column, and it's going to be an integer, and it's going to be an identity, which is what I was going through earlier, when it means that SQL is going to generate an automatic number for me. And in order for it to be an identity, I have to specify the seed, which in my case is going to start at 1000, and then the incremental value, which is 1. And then after I did all of that, I can also specify whether I will accept null values or not. Since I don't want to accept in this case, I'm just going to say not null. Then to start off a new column, I have to add a comma, and then go back to a new line, and then write column 2, and then precise again the field type, which I'm going to say in varchar, which we learned is variable characters with Unicode. And then in order to determine the length of the characters that are allowed, I'm going to add that they can go as long as 100 characters. And I'm going to say that I accept nulls, and that I don't have to end with a comma because that's the end of my query. So to run the query, I can click on this execute, or I can click on F5. I already created a temporary table. Let's do that, F5. All right, now we have it. So let's go to the database and see where this table is. So to do that, I'm going to click on refresh. What I have noticed is that when it comes to new tables, sometimes like instead of refresh, I have to like disconnect and reconnect my my view. But in this case, I don't have to. I just had to change the view here. So right here, if I go to design, you'll notice that I have the column 1, column 2, and the data type and whether it allows nulls or not. And then for column 1, you'll notice that if I scroll down to identity specification, I said yes to it. And then if I click through the menu, you'll see that the seed value is 1000, just like I said in the code. So all looks well. It works great. All right, let's move on to the next thing. So let's create a new query again. And this time, I'm going to create a database. So I'm going to use the create function, and then I'm going to say I'm going to create a database, and I'm going to call it DMATemp. And then that's it. That's all I'm going to say. So let's see if we run it. Click on F5. All right, it worked. Now for the databases, I know for a fact you need to disconnect and reconnect. So let's do that. I'm going to disconnect here and then reconnect, say connect. All right, so now it's right here. So you can see that I have my new database. Great. So now let's talk about alter. So if we're using the H+ active, right, I can actually say that I want to alter a specific table. So in my H+ active, the table that I created is the DMATemp and DMATemp2. So let's just say I want to use DMATemp real quickly. So I'm going to alter the table, which is called DEMA temp. And I'm going to do that by adding a column 3 to it, which is also an nvarchar 50 that does not accept null. All right, so let's try that. I'm going to end it with a semicolon. And then I'm going to run the query. All right, so it's successfully executed. So let's take a quick look. So let's go to the design tab. Actually, let's go to refresh first. Let's get out of here. Refresh. Close it out first. Let's go back. Tables. And then design. Here it is. So now we're seeing that column 3 that I created. All right, let's go back to this. And now instead of adding a column, let's say I want to drop the column. So all I have to do is change add to drop and remove all these specifications. So let's change that. I'm going to say drop here. And then let's run the code. So F5. That didn't work because I forgot the column here. There we go. Let's go F5. All right, now we're good. So let's look at the design again, but before I do that, let me make sure everything's closed. Nope. 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 And close. All right, so now if I go to the design menu, you'll see that column 3 has disappeared from my view. All right, so that's so far we've altered the table by adding a column and removing a column using the drop function now, right? Let's talk about then, and we've also created a database and we created a table from scratch. Let's talk about dropping the entire table. So let's do that real quickly. So I'm going to start a new query, and this time I'm going to say I want to drop table, and I'm going to say I want to drop DEMA temp, which automatically gets populated for me, and DEMA temp 2. Let's see if this works. So let's run the query F5. All right, it worked. So now let's disconnect, reconnect, connect. All right, let's look at it. Oh no, oh, that's the database. Yeah, we're good. So let's look at H+ active and then tables, and then those 2 tables are gone. Great, so we learned how to drop a column, we dropped a table, we added a column, we altered the tables by adding or removing columns through drop. We learned about the use functionality. We used create to create a database and the create table. All right, so what's left? So the other thing that I saw at the end of the videos is that he used the select into and from function to copy different tables together, and that you can create several query codes within the same page and end them and run them one by one. So the example here is that he used this exercise file, and I'm just gonna pull it up. So in my exercise files, he used, let's see, this is the one that we saw already, so we don't have to worry about it because we learned how to do this. So he used this line of code. So let's go through it real quickly, and let's zoom out. All right, so he created a use function here, and then he selected all the columns from, all the columns from the database. And then he said, copy into temporary customers, which is a brand new table that he's creating without having to create a table from scratch from customers. So I'm gonna see if I can execute this to show you how that works. So we're gonna select just this piece, and then when I click on F5, so this executed correctly. So if we go to the H+ active and we click on refresh, and we go to tables, you'll see that I have this table now that I didn't have before. And then if I just select the top 100 of the customers, you'll notice, okay, we have Aiden Crawford on the first line, And if I select the top 100 of the temporary customers, Aiden Crawford is also on the phone on the first line. So this created like basically a copy paste approach to this. So this is what it does when we run it. And then he went through use H plus active and select from temporary customers. So this is selecting all the columns from it. So let's see what happens when we do that. So if we click on this and run F5, so this will pull out the columns from this database, specifically from this table. So use is for database, select is for the columns, and from is from the table. So that's, I feel like I learned that earlier in the SQL bot training. So now I'm looking at all of these options just to see it more clearly. And then he used the truncate table, temporary customers. So truncate, let's talk about truncate. Truncate means that you're deleting all the rows in a table. So the way you use it is you use truncate table and then you precise the name of the table. So that's what we're using that for. So if we click on that and then just click on F5, it will run it. And now he created the same view as earlier where you're selecting and then viewing what happened to it. So if we click on that, you'll notice that all the rows are deleted. And then finally, you can drop the entirety of the table by clicking on F5, and now the table is gone. And if I click on refresh again, you'll notice that my temporary customer table no longer exists.